there ain't no stopping us. Fly without boarding pass. Couldn't catch me, I be moving fast. Call me a shooting star. Let 'em know who you are. Flying up in a bar. Wish on a star. Time to show 'em who's in charge. Call me a shooting star. Didn't even get to cross. I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass. Looking at a shooting star. Got more than a couple of people going mad. I swear they're rooting hard. Tell them I'd be big in the game like she went and got them breast implants. I said I'm moving too fast, didn't even get to glance. I'm ready to eat up track like I'm seated in a restaurant. If you had swag like mine, you know it's best to flaunt. We aren't hating because you aren't shining like it's neon, rock like kings of Leon. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I'll just have to leave. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I'll just have to leave. Yeah, shoot. Yeah, shoot. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting shots. Shooting stars. Didn't even get to cross. I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass.
Okay, well, hello everyone. As usual, I am running always a bit late. Move that camera back a little. That is the story of my life, but we will get started. I just got done washing my face, so if it seems a little dewy. And I want to put up the comments because that is always the best part of these things. And I see Dave says he's driving, so he will be listening. So what we are covering today, as I'm getting ready for a day of bylaws and platform and recording the cult of RONR, is, again, a few more Dave Smith clips. And I'm sure Zach will be by to ask me, saying, is that all you cover? No, It's just that's what I'm binge watching right now. And when I find good stuff to talk about, I don't really care, if it's the same person I've been talking about for a while. Be grateful that I'm not on my Ben Shapiro kick right now. Let me just get this moisturizer on. I just slather it on there. When you're old, man, you can't have too much moisturizer. Oh boy. Okay, so oh, it looks like it's irritating my face a little. I see it getting all red. We'll have to let that settle down. All right, let me just wipe that goop off. Let's go to the first clip, shall we? Without any further ado.
So I tweeted the other day, and we'll play the video in a second, but I tweeted something the other day that I wanted to put out there, particularly because I saw so many libertarians, just outraged about the storming of the Capitol. And I just threw it out there and I said, I think an interesting question to ponder if you're on the left or the right, but especially if you're a libertarian, is when do you think it would be justified for angry citizens to storm the Capitol building? Now, I'm not asking you when you think it's strategically a good idea or anything like that. I'm just saying, since you're so outraged about this, is there any situation where it would be justified? What would that be? What would it look like? And I got a lot of interesting responses from it. And then, of course, some, outrage. So I tweeted the other day, and we'll play the video in a second. But I tweeted something the other day. Hold on one sec.
Let's go to the next scene.
I wanted to put out there,
Hold
particularly.
On. Be quiet, Dave. I'm talking now. Okay. Let me get this to me full screen if I can. Okay. So immediately my ears perked up at that because, as I've been doing those videos on the non-aggression principle, or actually more specifically, the drink that soda too fast. The NAP pledge and what that means when it comes to violent insurrection, or whatever you want to call it, was basically just say no. But I had not yet listened to any of these broadcasts from Dave Smith, and it is amazing to me. There is a standard that I use to see if I'm on the right track, because I drive myself crazy thinking. It's like, that's why I don't sleep, because my mind will not go to rest. I'll be thinking of shit like this. So a standard that I tend to take is, if I'm thinking of something and then I go and listen to other people that I respect and find that they're echoing the same thoughts, and even more particularly, let me put it to you this way, not everyone echoing the same thoughts, because then it's obviously right. You don't need any kind of confirmation if everyone is saying it. But if, at least one person that you respect out of the whole din is saying what you just were thinking, I think that's a good confirmation that at least, it doesn't mean you're right, but there's some good basis for what you were thinking. Like, you aren't completely off on La La Land. I tend to say that when you're the first or only person to think of something, you're not the genius you think you are. You're probably way off track. And I used to say that a lot when I was doing my theological work, and I would say theological novelty is not a good thing. And I think you can transpose that into political as well. Political novelty is probably not a good thing. Good ideas tend to come together. It's not just one person. I mean, every once in a while there's that theory of the great man. Chances are you're not the great man, I'm not the great woman. So with all that being said, Dave's going to start to go down a line that I was already thinking, which was very encouraging to me. So even though, put aside now your big L libertarian hat, because I made it clear in my video about the pledge that if you're going to be a pledged member of the Libertarian Party and you're going to be involved in a political solution, you have voluntarily laid aside your right to violently revolt against the government. If that's the path you want to take, don't be part of a political party, and certainly don't be part of the Libertarian Party, because we want no part of that. And if you go off and do something like that, you will find your former political party strongly repudiating you in terms you probably will not like. But that aside, in theory land, where we are not big L libertarians, because this question was asked of me, is it ever justified to storm the Capitol, say? And I think we would be very hard pressed as libertarians to say, no, it's never justified. That's kind of insane, because we do agree that the government is aggressing against us. Now, I personally can say it's never justified for me, but that's because I have a religious view, not a political view, a religious view of pacifism. So for me personally, never justified. But that's me, and it's a religious thing, and I don't impose it upon anybody else. So the larger philosophical question still remains. Now, I think you all should be asking yourself, when might it be justified? Just in theory. I'm not trying to get you to, put a barometer on your wall and go, oh, well, when it reaches that point, I'm off. No, no, no. As I also said to libertarians, it's some of them who seem to be very, very eager for civil war, that, be careful what you wish for. Because if you got civil war, I don't think you'd like it once you got it. It isn't a video game. It isn't all glory. It is terror and blood and death and destruction. And though there might be a bright light at the end of the tunnel, it isn't always that way. And I see Mike Seebeck did not get my message that he was supposed to come late. And I see him ringing my doorbell. Let me give him a call to see if he wants to come in the house and wait, or whether he might want to go get something to eat or something. So let me give him a call. Pardon me. Sorry about that. Derby, 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 derby. If he doesn't answer, I'm going to have to go down there and take a short break on the live stream. Well, I'm assuming that was him. Hey, are you at my door? I texted you 2 hours ago saying, can we make it later? That's okay. Is the door open? Well, here's what I'm asking. I need an hour, and you're more than welcome to hang out and do stuff, but I didn't know if maybe you had errands to run. Can you check the door? Otherwise, I'll need to come down. I'm in the middle of a live stream, so that's why I'm avoiding coming down. Okay. Okay, so I will tell everyone on the live stream that I got to run down and let you in. And you could either hang up here in the room with me while we're live streaming, or work on bylaws or something down in the living room. Okay, I'll be right down. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, guys, if you will give me a few minutes, what I'm going to do is play my countdown timer so that there's music going, but I'll stop the countdown timer when I come back. I don't want people coming into the stream and be like, oh, there's just an empty thing. So go to the bathroom, go get a drink. We shall be back, and I will edit this out of the final product.
No, there ain't no stopping us. Fly without boarding pass. Couldn't catch me, I'll be moving fast. Call me a shooting star. Let 'em know who you are. Flying up in a bar. Wish on a star. Time to show 'em who's in charge. Call me a shooting star. Didn't even get to cross. said I'm moving too far. Get to glass.
Okay, I'm back. I'm not sure if Mike's coming up or not, but he's invited to. So, where were we? Here he comes. I'll have him say hi. I'm not going to be putting makeup on him. Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of over. Just so I can.
Hi.
So we're getting ready for Cultivar ONR, but you might hear some peanut gallery stuff in the background if you want to just set in, and if you wanted to bring your laptop up too, if you wanted to.
I don't know what to do on there at the moment. So.
Okay, remember we need to review the platform too.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so
We got that meeting tonight.
I'll do this as kind of quickly as I can, but we had so far did a Dave Smith clip. I'm recapping for Mike. You guys just gotta be patient. Where he said he was talking about libertarians who was very upset about what happened with the Capitol. And he asked them, well, would there be any circumstance in which storming the Capitol would be justified? And he said he got some good answers, but he also got some, you know.
Oh, is that what that post was this morning?
Did I post a re?
Facebook post?
Oh, no, that had to do with, no, libertarians just a lot. No, that had to do with me bitching about Facebook censoring Trump I didn't mention the state or the government anywhere. And half of the comments are, what a libertarian you are, you want the government. Where did I say anything about the government? Since when do companies get to do what they want mean they get to do what they want without being criticized?
If they can do what they want, why can't they open up with the coronavirus stuff?
Yeah, but, Facebook's not closed from. But it was like crazy.
That's a point, though.
I never once mentioned the government. Yeah. And it's like, okay.
And as I said on your Facebook feed about that earlier, just because they can do it doesn't mean they should.
Right.
In this case, they shouldn't.
Correct. But we'll probably get into that a little bit here, too.
Trying to run over your backdrop here.
Yeah. And you want to know what? I can move this. So if you want to, this is just my Skippy. I got you. There's still room for you. We got the little dog here, too. I had a little stain I was cleaning up, too.
That happens.
Okay. All right. So let's go to the next clip. I think this is the one I've already done. Let's go here. And next one. If I can get it going.
What a lot of people ended up responding with was it would have to be for this reason or for that reason or something like that. And that might be fair enough. There's something to that point, but then it almost like it leads you down this interesting next thread where you're like, okay, so it's not the act itself that you think is so outrageous. It's that they were doing it in support of Donald Trump. That's what you're outraged by, because that kind of changes the dynamic of how outraged you can be.
And also, a quarter 15 minutes.
It does, though, doesn't it? Are they just mad because it was Trump? Or are they mad because it was the actual act? And you see I got the comments thing up here, too.
Well, I have a friend in California who pointed out something on Vox. I'm going to find it here real fast.
Okay, and I'm going to move the mic where it's going to catch both of us a little bit better. No, I'm just going to move it right here. This is a good mic.
No worries.
So, yeah, I found that really super interesting as to whether they were mad just because it was Trump. So
yeah, here it is.
Okay, so what did your friend say?
This is from, she posted a pair of screenshots from Vox by the same author. I gotta make this wider so I can see it. There we go. The author was somebody by the name of German Lopez. The first one was posted on September 22nd of 2016. And the headline says, "Riots are destructive, dangerous, and scary, but can lead to serious social reforms. Byline, to prevent more violent uprisings and protests, we need to take their causes seriously."
Is this the old one?
Yeah.
Yeah, the old quote.
Fast forward to January 6th, same author. "Every person who forced their way into the Capitol should be arrested. Lock them all up." You think he ought to make up his mind?
Yeah, that's what's been really crazy about this whole thing is the differing perspectives, and it shows to me a bit of hypocrisy.
Oh, this guy's the same. This is the same author.
Yeah, no,
So,
I know.
Yeah. This is
AOC.
This is hypocrisy at its finest.
Yeah, AOC did the same thing.
Always out of clues, yes.
Yeah. And every time I do my makeup, I fuck up my contact lens. It's like I'm trying to get it to not go in the behind my eye.
Fun.
Yeah, so it really seems like people like are pretending to have this objective riots are the voice of the unheard type attitude, as if they don't care one way or another about the cause, that it's just, in theory, riots are good or could be good or could be used for good. But underlying it, you soon find out, no, it's just the riots I agree with. And what's even stranger with this is I agree with the cause of a lot of the earlier riots before. The police brutality and things like that, I mean, they freaking suck. And I understand what they were upset about. But in that circumstance, I didn't agree with the destruction of property they did, obviously. But then
that never made sense in the first place.
Well, but
why destroy private property when you're bitches with the public police?
Because mobs are mindless, but right, they were destroying private property, which I had a huge problem with, and nobody wanted to talk about that, including the Libertarian Party, by the way. They didn't hardly, and I'm very upset at the Libertarian Party right now. And people are asking me, you're on APRC, did you raise appropriate objections? I'm not allowed to tell you or I'd kill you. Let's just say, have you ever known me to keep my mouth shut? And that should answer your question. But here, the property, quote unquote, that they destroyed is government buildings. I'm sorry, I'm not crying any fucking tears for government buildings. Yet, the National LP tweet, of course they weren't talking about the buildings, they were talking about the people, but and we pray for the safety of all those in Washington. Okay, great. People, that's fine. I'm always all about people. But where were our prayers for the safety of the property owners that were getting their shit destroyed? We didn't say anything like that. And what it looks to the public like, oh, your fellow swamp rats. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're praying for them, but not your average Joe. When the swamp gets attacked, when the seat of power gets attacked, there's panic. But when it's Joe liquor store owner, on Main Street, we're not.
Well, of course, because after all, it's what Joe's liquor store on Main Street is evil capitalism, but the U.S. Capitol is the sacred seat of our beloved government.
But we're talking from libertarians, though.
No, I'm talking from their perspective.
Yeah, well, not libertarian.
No,
perspective.
Our perspective is the opposite.
But what I'm saying is it hasn't been.
Yeah.
I mean, the rank and file might be, but not the voice coming out of the National Party. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, I can only put so much of that on the current term because a lot of the tone of that messaging was set last term by Nick, and we all know where Nick was coming from with that. Well, we don't really know, but we know it was bad.
We do, but
we don't know why.
Yeah, we do, but that's something pornographic. But anyway.
Yeah, we don't know how that happened or what happened to him, but yeah. So I don't entirely place that at the feet of this LNC, though we could have did an about face. But this, But anyway, yeah, I in answer to the question, did I object where I could on a secret committee that I'm not allowed to tell you anything about? All you got to do is just think about me and that I don't keep my mouth shut. And you have your answer without me telling you the answer. Okay, next clip.
Right? Like if there was, say, like a tyrannical government and someone wanted to overthrow them, you're saying that is justified if you want to replace them with the correct government, but it's not justified if you don't want to replace the, I'm not saying the argument falls apart, but it certainly gets a little bit weaker than just this is never justified. And of course, if you look at what the government has done to its own people this year, like literally locking people in their houses, taking away their livelihood, bailing out corporations, robbing people while they have no jobs because the government forced them out of work. I mean, it's kind of hard for a libertarian to argue that if they were doing it for the right reasons, it wouldn't be justified, right? So that's kind of the position you're in.
And I think we both agree with everything there. I think you and I don't know your position on libel laws and things like that. We're probably going to have an interesting discussion at the end here. But yeah,
that's a good segue into the Dominion lawsuit.
I had a good discussion with someone on Facebook that's going along the same lines that Dave Smith did, where they say, well, but those people are there to have a coup and install Trump as king. And I first said, that's your delusion masquerading as fact. No such thing was trying to happen. But let's pretend so. If people have a right to abolish the government and set up a new government that they think might best protect their freedom, there are people who do think a good king is better than a bad democracy. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with them, but they have the right to think that. So what? They only have this right to set up new government as might seem best to protect their freedom if you agree with them? That some people might prefer a dictatorship and think that that's better. I don't.
This goes back to the whole discussion of what was going on back in both 1776 and 1787. The whole Declaration of Independence. Jefferson said it specifically, that it is the right to throw off government and institute a new one.
Right. And
in the Constitutional Convention, Hamilton, that schmuck, wanted to make, instead of a president, they wanted a monarch-like figure as the executive and to serve for life. Then he tried to get it for a 6-year term until they settled on a 4-year term in that convention. So there is historical precedent to back up exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, but so they're like, well, so it would have been, so basically it is, yeah, all these things are rights, but only if we like how you're exercising the rights. Well, that's not fucking how rights work, dude.
That's how the left thinks it works.
But these are libertarians. Yeah. I'm not talking about, I don't deal with the left on this.
Well, there's been a lot of co-opting in that direction, unfortunately.
And unless they come in my chat, I'll talk with anybody. Okay, right. We got a comment here. NPR suggested a libertarian was involved in the Capitol building riot. Well, there was a lady who claimed to be a small L libertarian. I don't know how she was registered to vote if she lived in a partisan state. But that isn't a suggestion. That actually, I believe, is now a proven fact. The word libertarian is quite broad. It doesn't just mean LP member. So I'm surprised there's just one.
Or it could also be a typical NPR leftist attempt to smear the LP at any opportunity they can.
Now, they have clips from this lady. This lady did identify as a libertarian. Yeah. I just don't know to what extent.
But they'll still use it to paint with a broad brush.
Oh yeah, of course. Of course, they're gonna bring that up. But there's quite a bit of information on this lady. But I hadn't read yet whether she was a registered libertarian or whatever. If she was See, here's the whole other thing, though. I think it's obvious when you watch the storming the Capitol with Mr. Viking hat. These aren't insurrectionists. They were an internet mob that went there. I don't think they had any intention of going into the Capitol. I think one or two people started going in, and the rest of them were like, oh, we're going in.
There's actually footage of the Capitol Police not only helping them pull aside the barriers, but waving them in. Even Liberty Hangout had footage of that one.
Liberty Hangout? What do you mean, even Liberty Hangout? Even Liberty Hangout is gross as fuck. So
yeah, but this was raw, uncut. So
I don't trust anything.
And there were other places had similar footage from different directions too.
Yeah, see, I like dealing with things more in the abstract, though. I think it was pretty apparent they weren't there to throw over the country.
Of course not.
When they got in the building, what they do? They took fucking selfies.
I mean, the highlight of the whole thing was that somebody stole Nancy Pelosi's laptop.
Yeah, it's...
The question is, did they image the drive first? Hopefully they did and sent the whole information to Assange and Snowden.
So it's, they weren't.
Yes, I just said that because, frankly, they need to be exposed for the corrupt you-know-whats they are.
Wait, let me get this. I'm putting in my contouring.
Yeah.
Women deceive you more than you knew. You're in the central chamber here.
Well, look on the bright side. You ain't Tammy Faye Baker. You don't apply it with a paint roller.
Don't put it past me. I like makeup.
Yeah, but not that much.
I wouldn't know how to put on that much. Okay. Man, and I'm telling you, this contact is in the back of my eye right now. That keeps doing that. Whoa! Did it come out?
You gotta get LASIK, man. You just
I can't. My eyes shape. I went and got evaluated. I'm not a candidate for it.
fun.
Because look, I got my contact out. I hope you guys found that nice and gross. Where did it go?
I didn't see it.
No, it came out though. I just don't want it on my face. It's a disposable, so I don't really care where it went.
I didn't see it. No pun intended.
Do you see it on my face?
No.
Okay, well,
actually, wait a minute. Look over here. Let me see your eye.
It's not in my eye. It came out.
Okay. I don't see
yeah, no, it fell out somewhere. Okay, well, you're gonna
on that ledge somewhere, maybe.
Who cares? Anyway. It's disposable, so I don't really care about finding it. I was gonna throw it out anyway. All right, so next clip. Let's see. Oh, do it from here.
And now, okay, again, you can still say it's strategically a bad idea. That's a completely separate conversation. And I'm not advocating, anything like this. It's an interesting philosophical question to me.
Okay, it's an interesting philosophical question to me too. But yeah, he's basically saying it'd probably be pretty stupid, and I agree. Even if you can find a justification, I mean, unless you really are on a suicide mission, I wouldn't do it. And these people who they were LARPers, they weren't insurrectionists. And they're going to pay dearly because the government is going to make an example out of them. But when you see a picture of the quote-unquote insurrectionists, and my first comment is this the new iteration of the Village People? I think that's,
it's fun to stay at the U.S. Capitol.
It's just...
Sorry, it's too easy.
But that's the first thing I thought. I'm like, what? These aren't insurrectionists. But no, it's not a good idea. Let's see what we got here next.
And so the other, once you start pulling the threads out of all of this, what you realize is that from the Trump supporters' perspective, if what they're being told was true, and I'm not saying it is, I'm really not convinced one way or the other about election integrity or fraud in the election. And if I was, you guys know me, I'd fucking tell you. But they're basically being told, and from talking and seeing some of the interviews with a lot of the Trump supporters who were down there, it wasn't just about Donald Trump. I mean, they were upset about lockdowns. They were upset, they feel like the government is fucking over the people, and is no longer accountable to the people and all of this. But they also very much believe that this election was stolen from Donald Trump. Now, if that were true, would it be justified to storm the Capitol building?
Okay, that is the question I wanted to get to. And that is and I broke a nail. Yeah, it sucks. I'm going to have to glue that on or something.
World's tiniest violin.
Yeah, my God. I could probably glue it on for our show. I don't want to have a no nail for the show, but let's just put that aside for a second there. At least it didn't bleed. The point he brought up was what I was trying to bring up to libertarians, where they were like, well, this was unjustified type thing. I said, because we're not going to argue about fraud. Mike and I disagree about fraud, but because it's beside the point. Because they were like, what they went there for wasn't true. I go, it's irrelevant. Did they believe it was true? And if they believed it was true, is that a legitimate reason to storm the Capitol? And he's going to come to this conclusion, unless I missed it when I was looking for my eyeshadow. Yes, I think it is. If you think that democracy was so broken that your vote no longer mattered, that elections got stolen, what almost bigger reason could there be?
I don't see a bigger reason. That's one of the very cores of our
Right.
republic.
It's like people are judging this outside of the beliefs of these people. I'm not getting into whether they were good faith beliefs or not yet. Were they sincere beliefs? I believe they were. And so when you hear these hysterical commentary, including coming from the National Party, that they were attacking democracy. Well, I don't literally do it violently, but I attack democracy every single fucking day with my words. But really, just put in their shoes and let's do the alternate reality. Let's say it was all true. You could say that what they thought they were doing was saving democracy. And when you evaluate other people's motives, you have to be fair. You have to evaluate them from their point of view. Mm-hmm. Now, we could get into whether or not it was reasonable for them to believe that. You obviously would think it is because you think it's reasonable, and I think you're a reasonable person. We disagree, but I know a lot of my friends that I consider reasonable people are convinced that there was election fraud. I'm not, but I can't write off everyone who believes it as irrational, flat earthers.
Well, whether or not you believe there was fraud or not, you're right, I do believe there was. I believe I saw it firsthand in terms of how the returns came in, but that's not the point.
Right. We're talking more theory.
Right.
Yeah.
There were people up there who believed that and had
sincerely, right.
But there were also people up there who were not necessarily there because of the concern about election fraud, but because they were there to support Donald Trump. And that's fine too. But the problem that's happened is that you're seeing the media frame all of it as being supporting Trump. They're discounting the possibility of election fraud the way that they have done it from all the way since November 4th. And as a result, they're creating a false narrative loaded with what I would call crapaganda because they're not objectively addressing the situation. And the reality of it is, out of all that mob, and there was only about a handful who were actually breaking a window or two or storming the way. Everyone else was standing there literally just milling around. The reality of it is this. If you're going to storm the Capitol to have a coup, and the left doesn't know what that term means either.
I think you'd leave your little horns at home. But...
You would not try to stand out like that. B, you would come much better armed than that.
Yet none of them drew guns.
Right, except the Capitol Police guy who shot and killed that one lady.
Yeah.
And the third thing of it is you would be a lot more organized to deal with and plan it out for contingencies to deal with these things. You would have scouted, you would have reconned your area and prepared yourself for an actual literal battle, not just a freaking flash crowd pissed off at the Electoral College for proceedings.
Well, and when you got in, the first thing you did wouldn't be to take a selfie.
Yes.
And post it on social media.
Right.
That's kind of stupid.
Exactly. So if this was an attempted coup, and I doubt it was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen.
And I don't even think it was a spontaneous coup where you could write off the planning issue going, well, they didn't plan on it, but when they got there, they worked themselves up into a frenzy and then decided. I don't think there's any evidence of that.
And if that was the case, they wouldn't have stopped when the doors were to the House chamber were barricaded. They would have broken it down.
Well, and they wouldn't have taken a selfie either. But
exactly.
I mean,
it's...
all the evidence points to it being somewhat not the most intelligent internet crowd. And,
right.
Come on.
And the other thing that gets me about is everybody on the left is yelling and screaming, "This is sedition. We need to lock them up and execute them for that." And it's like, okay, guys, why don't you go talk to John Adams about that?
Yeah, it's really downplaying sedition.
Well, it's not. They don't even know what it means.
I know, but they did end up where they knew they weren't supposed to be. Whatever laws they broke, okay. It is someone else's property. No matter how I feel about government property, fine. I'm not justifying what they did. It's just not the huge thing that it's being made out to be. Yeah. But it has the potential to turn into something very, very huge and ugly. And I get that.
They're now talking about building a solid concrete 7-foot wall around the entire Capitol.
And they're going to keep all the politicians in there, quarantine them from the rest of us? Good.
Well, my immediate thought was, okay, fine. Have one way in and out, and then when everybody's in there for a joint session, somebody walk up and change the padlocks.
Yeah.
And then everything will be better again.
Now, we'll say you had said some of them were there just to support Trump.
Some were.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah.
If any of them, I don't know if we have any breakout as to the ones that were there who legitimately believed the fraud or whatever, and the ones who were just right. The ones who were just there to support Trump, there was no justification for getting out of hand. It's the people. The issue I'm talking about is if they did, quote unquote, storm the Capitol, what is a potential justification? Just liking Orange Man is not enough. But believing that democracy was stolen is a legitimate reason. And
yet the other thing is this, and I've seen accounts from this from people who were there online. There were people who went to Trump's speaking thing over down at the Ellipse before they went to the
in Wayne's home too.
Yeah, before they went over to the Capitol. And when they got to the Capitol, things were already happening. Which means either they had people who were, and I'll say the word, agents provocateur already starting stuff, or word traveled way fast. I think, to be honest, my own opinion, I think what started this whole mess to get out of hand was Mike Pence.
Yeah.
Because that's what caused everybody to go, what the blankety blank is happening here? And that's what really, I think, riled things up, because he was seen as a means to put the kibosh on all this stuff that they felt was the fraud. And he literally,
we're live streaming, Wayne, just letting you know.
To them, he literally wussed out on them. And having read the letter that he put out, he put his own political career ahead of that of the country, and in doing so, he may have killed both.
Well,
time will tell.
Yeah, you and I have different opinions on that. I actually believe Pence did the right thing, but
time will tell.
That's okay. So there is a potential justification if, in fact, that was true. But we all know they weren't there for a freaking insurrection. Yeah. It's just that's not how you. And listen, if that was an insurrection, and all it takes is some dude with Viking horns and a couple Trump flags for us to be successfully insurrected against.
Then Barney Fife is the greatest deputy sheriff in
We've
history.
got bigger problems than, the village people storming the Capitol.
It's fun to stay at the Washington, D.C.
It's just, it's
We're gonna
silly.
Stay there and stage a fake coup.
Silly. So, and over panicking doesn't. Over panicking just encourages more. I think the best thing to have done with these people, because it was silly, was to laugh at just how stupid it was. But I think he has some.
Let's make him sign a guest book. Because the other thing about this is crazy is now we have people on the left yelling and screaming for the congressmen and senators who objected to the votes, which is their right to do.
It's their right to do
under statute, 3 USC 15 specifically, to be recalled, removed from office, and so on for violating their oath of office and going against the Constitution and engaging in sedition. I'm finger quoting like crazy over here, and engaging in a coup. And I'm sitting here going, no. First of all, they didn't violate their oath at all. They were following the law and the rules of the proceedings. Number two, they have every right to make that objection. It's been happened before. Hell, the Democrats have done it in the last 3 elections, in various times. And the bottom line of it is they did nothing wrong. Even my own congressman, who I normally think is slightly more functional than a limp dish rag, actually had enough sense to stand up and say, wait a second about this. And I'll give him credit for that, for doing something right for once. But the reality of it is they didn't do anything wrong. It's just that there are people that don't agree with them, and they're the ones who are calling these folks an embarrassment. They should be recalled and everything else. And it's like, I'm sorry, but one of those Congress people for this state of Colorado just got there. And so it's like, come on. And she already said in advance what she was going to do. And she got elected anyway. And frankly, she's a hell of a lady. So, you don't like it, fine, but run a better candidate if you don't like it.
Well, and I just have a problem with, because again, I don't particularly like it, but I don't judge like my feelings about the whole circumstance and trying to analyze it politically based upon if they did what I wanted or not. Mm-hmm. which is kind of what I'm, the issue that I'm having.
And that's what a lot of them are objecting to.
Yeah. So I'm going to go, I think we have more on this, but I'm not sure. And I'm trying to decide what other color I want to do. I think purple.
If the Democratic election had just been stolen, like Donald Trump really won, but because from the highest levels of government all the way down to the most local levels of government, there was a conspiracy to steal it and give it to Joe Biden. If that were true, then would it be justified to storm the Capitol building? And I got to say, I think that you can certainly disagree with the premise, but if you grant the premise, I think you have a very tough time arguing that it's not justified.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we were saying. And that's what I would like to hear libertarians actually address. Again, not from an LP perspective.
That's a pretty impartial evaluation right there.
Yeah.
It's right on the money.
It is. And I thought he did a really good job with it. And again, I have to say over and over again, not speaking as an LP member because, of course, we have the pledge and all that. But I can't find like the brush I want. I'm sitting here going, look at all these brushes, and I'm thinking I need more. Oh, this one might work. No, that's no good. It's too limp. That's what she said. Yeah. So, yeah, I want to hear libertarians address the issue that if an election was stolen, you don't need to agree this one was, if in fact, in theoretical land, an election was stolen.
And if is a big word, folks.
Right.
It's the biggest, smallest word in the English language.
Right. We're mining the subjunctive here. Would it be justified to do the equivalent? I'm using storm the Capitol as a fill-in for any number of things that would be kind of equivalent. And I would love to hear a libertarian argument that it wouldn't. Not that it would be stupid. I think it would be stupid.
Well, let me extend that question. Let's go back a couple hundred years. It was the British attempting to confiscate the munitions of the towns at the arsenals at Lexington and Concord, justification to shoot the bastards. They thought so.
Yeah, it's hard to know. The funny thing, though, when you go back into history, things like that, I'm always a little bit reluctant because in some sense, history is written by the victors. So I don't always trust everything that's in the account. But that's why I prefer dealing in ifs.
Yeah.
Because you can make a pure theoretical situation and not be worried that there's some fact you didn't.
But the point I was getting at was, at what point is it justified versus what it isn't? And that's the real question.
And it's not always easy.
No, it's not.
But if we all grant that in theory, moving outside of pacifists and things like that, that there is a point at which it is, I do think you have to ask yourself what that point is. And if a legitimate belief that the election was stolen isn't, then really where is your warm fuzzies and all this loyalty you're claiming to democracy? Because without fair elections, there's no democracy. That's the cornerstone. Okay, let's see if we got anything. I don't know if I have more Dave Smith or if we're going on to this mistake I think I made talking about libel.
So Donald Trump is telling his supporters that this is what happened. Okay? So he's telling them something that would justify what they're doing. And then when they do that, what does Donald Trump do?
Okay, now this brings up a whole other point. You may not agree with this, but I love his perspective. He basically had said Donald Trump is not anything anyone thinks he is. He's not the boogeyman the left thinks he is. And he's not this strong, he loves me hero the right thinks he is. Dave Smith basically said he thinks Donald Trump's the first genuine politician we've ever had who's just himself. And he doesn't really give a shit about any of these people. He threw them under the bus after this happened. So what he was getting to was that, what did Donald Trump do? He basically threw him under the bus. That isn't really where I was going with it. I just thought that was interesting. But here's where it's going to get saucy. And I have no idea if you're going to agree with me. Probably not, because you and I don't agree on a lot of things, which is good. We agree on big things, but and I think we model how to disagree agreeably, but
most of the time.
Everybody, listen, we both fuck up sometimes.
We all have our moments.
Yesterday, if you had asked me, do I think Donald Trump incited what happened? I would have said, no, they went on their own. But today, after listening to this and thinking it through, why did they believe the election was stolen? There could be many reasons, but I think we'd be hard pressed to deny that a big reason wasn't because Trump kept telling them it was, and that he had the Kraken and he was going to release the Kraken, and he had all this evidence that they didn't have, and if they would just be patient. Yet today or yesterday, he concedes as a big betrayal of all these people that believed him that he had this evidence and it was going to come out.
Well, part of that came from some of his lawyers, not necessarily him.
I put ultimate responsibility on the one who opens their mouth.
But I'd also point out that I actually read the transcript of what he said at that Capitol rally, and at no point in what he said.
I'm not talking about that rally.
Well, no point in that did he to say go down and storm the Capitol.
No. I'm not talking about that rally at all. I'm talking about his rhetoric from the day after the election. These people believed that so firmly because he kept telling them it was true.
There was also a lot of independent evidence to that out there.
Well,
whether you believe it or not, it was there. I saw it myself.
I believe the people coming out with this, some of it might have been not air quotes evidence, and some of it was proven to be air quotes evidence, is because they were riled up by Trump kept saying this. Every election, there's always a core group of people who believe it was rigged. Every election. There's still Hillary people who believe it was rigged. But Hillary wasn't going around like, in the beginning she had said, yeah, but then she conceded and didn't really take it much further. But when you've got the most powerful man in the country saying every single day to his followers, who are already very, very loyal and excitable, that the election was stolen, he had to have known that they would be eventually stirred into action. It's inevitable. So while yesterday I would have said definitely no, he didn't. Today, I do think he incited this.
But at the end of the day, did he actually break the window, break down the door?
Oh, that's a different issue. We're talking about incitement. Whether or not incitement should be an actual crime or whatever is a whole other thing.
It shouldn't be, and it should not be either in a criminal or a political sense. They're trying to impeach him for claiming he incited this stuff when they have absolutely no evidence he did whatsoever. The ultimate goal of it, thing of it is people are responsible for their own actions, and they're the ones who committed the crimes, not him.
Well, I don't disagree there, but saying there shouldn't be anything such thing as incitement is different than saying there's no evidence for incitement. If you grant, like we did for the people's argument, something is true for sake of argument.
You give a comment.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, there's a bunch of them. If there is such a thing as incitement, he did incite. Now, whether or not there should be such a thing, that's a different question. But I can't find any way, and whether it should be impeached or whatever for that, that's, again, a whole other thing. But to me now, it's pretty clear he incited it. Now, should incitement be a thing? I was also considering that. I have to think about that more. I tend to think no, that people need to be responsible for their own actions, and that no matter what you say, you're not forcing them. You're not forcing them to go do something.
That's one of the fundamental core tenets of libertarianism. You are responsible for everything you say and you do. I can't sit here and point a gun at your head like this and say you will do this. That doesn't work. That's nobody is coerced to doing things like that in a normal situation. And I say normal because yes, it can happen sometimes, but at the same time, for the most part, people have the ability, especially in this country, to make that choice. Just because you want to knock somebody on their butt doesn't mean you're going to go do it.
But aren't people responsible for the information that they spread?
Yes, in a way they are.
And
but people are also responsible for verifying that information is accurate. It's two parts of it. I can sit here and tell you the sky is green out there. Okay. And it may be total bullshit, or it may be an aurora borealis going on. But unless you verify it, how do you know if I'm telling the truth or not?
But if you tell me something that requires certain specialized knowledge to know, and there's an urgency to act, and you're a trustworthy person, I don't have an answer. I'm throwing shit out. And I think the president, arguably, is in a position to know more things than any citizen could possibly verify.
By definition, he is.
And there is a certain urgency because there's a deadline coming up.
Right.
This isn't just Joe Citizen. So I don't know. I don't have the answer to this. I don't have the answer whether incitement should be a thing.
Excuse me.
I tend to think that it should be up to a point. And I think it's very situation specific. For instance, hypothetical crowd. A guy tells a hypothetical crowd that this lady over here just got raped by this guy, and this guy's about to get on a plane and flee the country. Yeah. And then the crowd detains him and harms him in detaining him. If that person who said that knew it wasn't true, it was just words, but doesn't he bear some responsibility?
In a case like that, yes.
Because there were those extra steps I put in. There right. was, a time thing that action had to be taken then.
Right.
I don't know. I'm really just throwing things out there.
That's also an accusation of a violation of someone's person, which is of a violent nature, which is a far different cry from just saying something.
Well, it is just saying something, though. He didn't. Nobody saw it happen.
Well, supposedly, but yeah.
Well, that isn't part of the story, so.
True.
So I don't really know the answer on incitement. I have to think about it some more. But I don't think it's so clear cut to say, well, he didn't force their hand to do that. He was in a certain position of power and trust for them to think he had information that they didn't have, and that the country was about to be turned over illegitimately. So there was the urgency, and there was the unequal knowledge relationship.
But he also never said, go there, storm the castle, take back your country. I have the knowledge of why this needs to be done. Trust me.
I don't think you have to say that.
That would be direct incitement. That would be no doubt about it. That's not what he said.
No, and no, it isn't. But I do think. What do? You tell a bunch of patriotic people this is going on. What do you do? I do think there are consequences from your actions you can't possibly expect.
Yeah.
And then there are ones that you should.
Right.
And to me, I think he is lucky that all that happened is crazy horned man went in there and took a selfie, because I think it would have been very possible for it to be really bad, to like something really, really bad to have happened. And he's lucky it didn't. Now, does this alleged incitement justify social media then banning him when they did? No, because when they banned him, he was trying to undo all his incitement. He was telling them to go home, and that's when they banned him. That's ridiculous.
That, and I want to see if I can find another one here which kind of points this out. This was something that,
and then we'll talk. There's some good comments here.
This was something that one of our LPCO board members said. This is John Pickerel, who is an outstanding libertarian, a very level-headed and rational guy, good friend too. He put up a quote. He said, "When you tear out a man's tongue, you are not proving him a liar. You're only telling the world that you fear what he might say."
Right.
That's the danger of censorship right there. As Dan Bongino said the other day, the cure for bad speech
is more speech.
Is more speech.
Right.
And that's the case. You don't eliminate the bad words. I don't mean by cussing. I mean the false statements, right, and the incorrect views and all those details, or whatever they are, however you want to describe them, by censoring the opposition. You do it by having a rational, open, calm discussion about the points of them and go from there. And whether you agree with Facebook and Twitter and God knows who else doing all this deplatforming and censoring crap or not, the reality of it is intellectual honesty and simple moral ethics indicate have the conversation and have it with an open mind to think things through, come up with a better answer.
Well, arguably, Facebook and Twitter and all them, so it gets funny, by silencing him, then give credibility that there's some conspiracy and they might be guilty of incitement.
Exactly.
That's what's really interesting. But I have a bunch of libertarians saying, well, he violated the terms of service. Where? And that one thing, that speech that he got censored for did not violate the terms of service. He literally was telling the people in the Capitol to go home. Mm-hmm. How is that violating the terms of service? I don't know where libertarians are coming for on this.
Because the interpretation of the violation of the terms of service is purely within the constraints of the platform itself. Actually, let me rephrase that. Within the constraints of the publisher themselves. Let's get the term right. And as a result, it is subjective on a case-by-case basis or whatever. I've seen this firsthand where I've seen people on Facebook who will say some of the most obscene and ridiculous things and nothing happens. But the minute that I say something which someone may get their knickers in a twist over, I wind up in Facebook jail. Even though what I said was completely accurate. And it wasn't really a matter of opinion, it was a statement of fact.
I would love some libertarian.
There's no appeal.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, there is none. But I would love for some libertarian to explain how that video of him telling people to go home violated the terms of service. It didn't. So even with the whole private property and all that crap that they kept saying, and I say all that crap because, and the people are going to be like, she said private property was crap. No, I don't think I'm having a very not nice feeling towards corporations. This isn't a private person's property.
You ever seen a corporation in a church praying?
No.
That's why they're not a person. Thank you. There's no consciousness there to be a person.
Okay, so view here, telling people that that one comment wasn't.
Which one you looking at?
That top one, it's not directly on point. This one is though, so I want to put this up on the screen. Charles Manson didn't kill anyone. Right, yeah. He only incited, right? So in that sense, he should be a free man. It's a fine line. And I do, yeah. Right. I mean, Charles Manson is usually the classic case of incitement. That was his defense.
Yeah.
That he didn't kill anyone. But I would be hard pressed to say he doesn't have responsibility. So I think is a really good example.
Well, it isn't, because Manson was directly interacting with his followers who did that right then and there in his compound house, whatever the hell he lived at. Trump doesn't have that direct interaction with these people in the White House. There's a separation layer there, which also has to be factored into the equation. It's the same reason why political leaders aren't always necessarily brought up on genocide or war crimes.
They should be.
Actions of their underlings. They're usually executed before that happens, either by themselves or by somebody else.
I don't think bringing that up was a good defense, because I think they should be. But I mean, that was a good question on the whole incitement thing, and I think that was probably it on the Trump stuff. Maybe I think we're going to where I think
what was that other one above it? I didn't get a chance to read it. That one. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, and I'll do this while you're reading that.
But the ones that went in the Capitol was okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
But it wasn't really like directly on point.
No, that's fine.
It.
I just didn't chance to see it, so that's cool. Thank you.
Okay. So, Charles, we got another one here.
That one, yeah.
I don't have my glasses on because I'm putting on my eyeliner. So let me see what
distance. There we go. Oh. Folks, when I'm looking through this, I got a microphone stand in front of me, and it's at a little.
Oh yeah, because it's very. So many Trump supporters feel that their standard of living is declining. It is. All of ours is, and their liberty is at risk. And yeah, and he put plenty of people's liberty at risk, as I went over yesterday with Justin Amash is taking the piss out of Trump. They're angry with government and corporatist. And Trump grew government in many ways, which makes them prime for outreach. All people are prime for outreach. Why isn't the LP reaching out to those Trump supporters who feel betrayed? I'm going to say something that a lot of people aren't going to like. I don't think we should be specifically targeting any group of outrage, this or that, for outreach. I just think we just outreach. And who hears it, hears it. Because when you're targeting one particular group, sometimes I think you soft pedal things that you don't think that they'll like, and you emphasize things that they might, and then they really don't know what they're getting into. We see that so much with the LP, where they come in and then they don't realize that we're for the legalization of all drugs or something, because whoever was evangelizing them never told them that, because they knew it would upset them.
That happens a lot. I've seen it. I've been guilty of it in the past in some outreach areas. The conversations I've had with a lot of Trump supporters are, they like a lot of what the LP stands for, except for one or two specific issues, and I think we all know what those are:
immigration,
and abortion, and trade,
and drugs.
Not as much on the drugs now as it used to be.
Oh, I think when they,
not the ones I've talked to.
When they think you're just talking about pot, they're okay. When you bring up that you're not just talking about pot, they aren't.
Well, I turn around and I point out that we already have legalized drugs and tobacco, alcohol, and sugar. And then they're like, what? But, I'll stop and make them think a little bit. But the thing of it, the feedback I've had anyway, and this is my own experience talking here.
Well, and you're in a different area in Colorado Springs.
No, I had this in California when I was out there too. Was that the objection was on the immigration and the abortion thing. They either wanted it to be more pro-choice or pro-life, depending on their perspective, instead of being the somewhat neutral that it's perceived to be. And at the same time, they had issues on immigration because a lot of them felt that we should be eliminating it and so on. But whether you agree with it or not, that was their perspective. The trade thing also comes back to that. They're like, well, part of what, and I get that more now, but part of what that is there is and this is the nerve that Trump hit over the past 4 years, is that people felt that their needs down on Main Street were being ignored and neglected by the bureaucrats and the politicians in both the state capitals and in Washington, and to some extent in the county seats in the larger cities, in favor of the lobbyists, the K Street folks, the Wall Street folks. It was all about pursuing the profit and the dollar, and instead of actually providing a way for people to make a living. And Trump came back and said, we're going to try to fix that. And that's what struck a nerve with him.
Oh, he definitely reached a felt need. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. I just worry, and it's not just to Trump supporters, it's to any kind of supporters, that I just don't think I don't do targeting like that. I just reach out to everybody. I don't care where they came from.
I've done some targeting in the past. It depends upon, where you're at and what you're doing. Case in point, we used to do outreaches at Pride Fests, and we would, I don't want to say couch our rhetoric, although that might be a true statement, but our targeting was more deemed to what we perceived as people who were sympathetic to those causes on the left, to try to say, hey, we're with you on that. And the same thing is true on the other side with gun shows on the right. Part of that is a little bit of branding and marketing. Part of it also is trying to make that appeal.
Well, that could be seen as targeting. I can see, but I know when I work a gun show booth, I don't only talk about guns.
Pardon me, I got a phone call here.
Okay, well, and you might miss the libel thing, but we'll get there. Yep, I'm fixing my eyeliner here and seeing if we have any more comments. Then we're going to go into something where I talked about I messed up, and I think I messed up, and I want to do a correction to a prior podcast. So while Mike's out of the room, let's see what other comments. Otherwise, we'll continue. Let's see here. So James says, in terms of drugs, many could be persuaded. I don't know if, the comment was that a lot of these Trump supporters could be persuaded about drugs. I haven't found that. I don't know. I don't want to poke my eye out, so I don't talk while I'm doing this. I mean, maybe they could. I just know that the ones I find if you're doing outreach to the right, immigration, abortion, drugs, prostitution. Those are the no-go for them. And those are huge. Those aren't minor issues in the party. Like there could be some things people disagree with, like some of our more obscure issues, like getting rid of driver's license or something. I don't know, something that isn't front and center so much. Those don't seem to set people off as much as these other issues. And they're not immigration and drugs, it's very difficult to exist in the Libertarian Party and disagree with those things. It's actually easier to disagree on abortion and exist in the Libertarian Party, I think, than disagree on immigration or drugs.
Well, part of that is because, well, I don't know about the immigration side. With the drug side, the libertarian argument goes back to simple self-ownership.
Right. Well,
in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I would say, let me even narrow that down. If you don't agree on the drug issue, I can't see you having any kind of serviceable good time in the party. Yeah. I mean, that right there, I think you just end up being miserable, because at least with immigration or abortion, you're going to find plenty of other people in the party who also disagree. You're going to find your little small dissident group. But I can't think of any significant amount of people in the LP that disagree on drugs. Yeah. That is just too simple to okay. All I gotta do is put on my eyelashes. I normally don't take this long, but we're talking, so that's why.
It's okay. It's good conversation.
Yeah. Let me just clear a little bit of this out of the way and pull this out to.
And for you folks who are wondering about this disembodied voice, if you're a late arrival, I'm off camera to Karen Ann's right.
Yeah. We're getting ready to do our Robert stuff today, which I still haven't edited last week. It's been crazy. I was going to do it this morning and I didn't get up in time. All right. So now the next and last clip
you should have seen me 2 days ago.
Where I messed up.
We'll show you the picture later.
Oh, do I want to?
I look like I'd been in a zombie attack.
What do I want to use
Insert
here?
punchline here, critics.
Okay, yeah. All right, so let's go to the next one. That's fucking utter slanderous bullshit, and I've challenged everyone to prove it. I believe slander is a violation of the non-aggression principle because it's fraud. It's leading people to believe things that aren't true. Okay, I got all kinds of pushback on that.
Okay, first of all, time out a second. What is the context of that statement?
Just somebody saying something. Oh, well, I'll give you the context, but to me, the context is kind of irrelevant. The statement kind of stands on its own.
I'm asking because it's the first I've heard it.
Oh, a friend, Zach, who comes into my chats a lot, was saying that Dave Smith is bad because he recruits alt-right grifters into the party.
He's recruiting who? Alt-right grifters?
Yeah, and it's.
We don't have any congressmen in the party.
But that's the context. And I was like, that's a fucking lie. You know, you saw it. So, but I got a lot of pushback where people were saying, do you really think that defamation of any sort, be it libel or slander, is actually a violation of the NAP? Let me put on my eyeliner, and I want to hear what you think on that. What do you think?
Well, right now, one of the biggest things in the news is this Dominion lawsuit against Sidney Powell, claiming libel over her claims that that their voting system was fraudulent and hacked and all that other stuff related to the alleged election fraud. My response to that is, okay, guys, if the first and principal defense against libel and slander is the truth. Okay? And now because you have put yourself in the position of suing over it, you are in the position of proving your claim. The only way they can really prove their claim is to, in this case, release the damn source code for their voting systems. Speaking as a software engineer, I would love to see that. Because I'm one of these people, and there's a lot of us out there who are in a position that we could do an objective audit of it and say, okay, guys, here's your problem with it, or here's why it's good. There were a few years back, this was probably 2010 roughly, there was a lot of discussion about trying to do an internal electronic voting system within the LP for use at national conventions. A collection of us, including myself, Lonnie Holcomb up in Idaho, and one other person, I think it was Rocky Eads also up there, said, okay, show us the source code. We're software professionals. We'll do an audit of it, and we'll tell you whether it's good or not. And they never produced it. And the thing died on the vine.
Well, in this case, though, let me preface. I know truth is an absolute defense. I'm saying if something is actually a lie,
Yeah.
I'm not even getting it. Obviously, it's not fraud if it's true.
Right.
What I'm talking about is defamation, actual defamation, saying something like that, saying something either libel or slander that's false. Should that be a crime? Or in some sense, a violation of the NAP? Like directly to what I had said.
Oh, it's definitely a violation of the NAP. No doubt about that, because you're right. It is a case of defrauding someone.
Is it? What are they being defrauded of?
Their reputation and their integrity.
Okay, that's.
While that may be considered an intangible thing, it's also part of them.
Is it? Okay. Let me just ask. We're not going to get into the IP discussion, but
No,
I think
this is more philosophical.
No, but I think the two issues are related. Do you believe in IP, intellectual property?
Not in the way that you object to it. Let's put it that way. At least the way I think you object to it.
I object to it in every single possible way you can imagine.
I take a more of a perspective on intellectual property from a tangible property perspective rather than a mental thing. That sounds weird, I know, but it's hard to really explain it without going into about an hour.
Because I find most people who think there should be like laws or things against libel or slander, I'm just going to use the generic defamation, generally believe in intellectual property. And the people who don't believe in intellectual property think it shouldn't. I found that breakdown. Because I don't think you can own your reputation, and I don't think you have a right to your reputation, because all your reputation is what other people think about you. And you can't own other people's opinions, and you don't have a right to other people's opinions.
That's true, but when their efforts to take your reputation and damage it through no legit action or fault of your own, which can then turn around and interfere with your ability to pursue your happiness, get you denied a job that you're qualified for, etc., and so on, then you've got a problem.
That may very well be true, but didn't you just say in the incitement thing that people have a responsibility to verify words?
They do. Doesn't mean everybody exercises that.
But is that the fault of the speaker?
That's not necessarily, but at the same time, if the person on the other end of it isn't verifying it and has the ability to harm someone else's reputation or problem, then they're inadvertently damaging that other person. I've had a case in the past where I had a job that was denied to me even though I was totally qualified for it because I found this out later, somebody else deliberately made crap up about me to the hiring manager, which made them come back and say no without ever asking me whether this stuff was true or not.
I've been damaged by libel and stuff before.
That was a 6-figure job.
But I don't want to make arguments based upon personal experiences. I understand it can happen. There's no doubt. But does that mean there's a right to keep it from happening?
Keep what from happening?
From somebody saying something false about you that might cause other people to think something wrongly about you.
Well, if they do it under oath, it's perjury. And frankly, if it's people making up crap about you that you can't defend because you don't even know about it or you're not even verified, that does harm you. And at the same time, it can cause issues that don't need to be happening in the first place if people were just freaking moral and truthful about it. Yeah, I know there's a question, how do you legislate morality? That's not what I'm getting at.
Well, actually, I think morality is the only thing you can legislate. I think that's a real dumb slogan of libertarians, and I'm going to deal with in another show. But
Fair enough.
um, there's it still gets back to, though, you have to have some kind of right to your reputation, and I just don't see where that right would come from. So kind of I think we can all agree that defamation is morally wrong.
Yes.
So that right there, fine. It's definitely morally wrong.
And that's also why defamation falls into the area of, and correct me if I have this the wrong statement, civil and tort law. Is that?
Yeah. Well,
right?
there is criminal as well, but most of it falls in that.
Yeah.
But there is some criminal ones, and to be honest with you, since I don't work in that area, I don't know the
I'm
distinction.
Not sure either.
But mostly it's civil. But there is criminal defamation of some kind.
And the legal system has developed a whole web of how that works for various people in various positions, whether you're a private citizen, a public figure, this, that, whatnot.
And I think, well,
and that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, but I'm just, oh crap, I always do this. But I just, I do think I spoke to. See, I always get it up on my eyeball there. I believe I spoke too hastily on that. So it's to walk it back. It's definitely immoral. We can all agree upon that. Mm-hmm. But is it definitely a violation of the non-aggression principle? Because to me, things that are violations of the non-aggression principle, you have a right to damages of some sort and a defense of some sort other than just words. You know, because you always have a right to speak. So I think I spoke too hastily in saying that it is actually a violation of the non-aggression principle. What's the remedy?
Well, again, it depends on the circumstances of the thing. And that's going to vary on a case-to-case basis. It could be something as simple as someone being as compensation compelled to publicly apologize and say why they said what they said was wrong.
You can't compel speech.
As a matter of compensation for a wrong, yes, you can.
Not in today's law, and I don't think in any kind of libertarian law you can ever compel speech. That's specific performance, and I don't believe in any.
That's part of the me main holding it.
You can't. It really isn't. There's no specific performance unless you contracted for specific performance is not a remedy under law. In common law, and I cannot find any justification for specific performance in libertarian theory. The only kind of damages there are that can be compelled are monetary.
And I think I disagree with that assessment. But
that's why if, say, you promise to marry somebody and you renege, you might be able to get monetary damages, but she can't be forced to marry you.
No, but if you're the one who jilted them, you can be forced to apologize to them for jilting
No,
them.
you can't. No, that's never been in any kind of law system that I'm aware of, but certainly not in American.
There's been tons of civil lawsuits where the group found liable have been forced to institute a public apology. It's happened a lot.
They agreed to. You can't force someone to.
No, I've seen judges rule you will apologize to this.
And it's not enforceable.
Apparently it was, because they did.
Just because somebody did it doesn't mean that if they challenged it, it would be enforced. Sometimes people do things because it's the easiest thing to do. Like, I don't believe taxes are just, but I pay them because it's easier than getting shot by the IRS or whatever.
Yeah,
but
it's a non-sequitur, but compared to this, but
you can't. You specific performance is like considered very loathsome under the law, and there's only very certain contracts, and it's written right into them that specific performance can be ordered, and there's certain real estate contracts that applies to. But when it comes to speech, you can't force speech. There's been I don't think there's. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't work in that area. I work in insurance law, so I would love a lawyer or a judge who's listening to show me where I'm wrong. But from all my schooling that I remember and reading, there's just no, you can't compel speech. And that's the big thing with Jordan Peterson and Canada, where he didn't mind, where I thought he should mind other things. He didn't mind certain speech being prohibited, but he lost his mind when they tried to say he had to say certain words. He's like, he didn't have a problem with saying you can't say certain words, and I think he should have.
Yeah.
But the minute they told him he had to say certain words, he lost his shit.
Because part of compelling speech, and this is the other side of the coin, is is if you're compelling speech, then you also you can also be arguing that you're compelling what is not said. And the opposite, and the flip of that has already been proven in law. You cannot compel speech, like for the Pledge of Allegiance, for example, in a public environment, because you're forcing someone to agree with something they may not necessarily agree with. And maybe I'm arguing against myself here.
You are.
But at the same time...
But that's okay. Sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah, but under law and under contracts also, what is not said is just as important and just as viable as what is said. And that goes into a different argument about what the bylaws committee has done, all that stuff. But the point of it is that that's well established that you have to, what you say and what you don't say both matter, and that makes a difference as well. So maybe I am wrong. Maybe you can't compel it as much as we'd like.
You can ask. You can certainly ask and have that as another remedy that a lot of people would prefer to do rather than pay money.
Yeah.
Because they'll go, I'll just fucking lie and say I'm sorry.
Yeah.
See, money is truthful. Like when you get your $100,000, you have it. When you get your apology, you don't know that they mean it.
Well, yeah.
You know,
most of the time, what people don't.
Right. So yeah,
there are a lot of people in this world that will mean apology, but they're not. I don't expect to get it.
Yeah.
Because A, they're not going to be sincere about it, and B,
they're too proud anyway.
And no, they're too oblivious because they don't understand why they should apologize.
Well,
they don't understand why there was a wrong there.
So, so I think I'm walking.
You know some of the people on top.
I do, because I'm in the same boat with them.
Yes.
So I do think I'm walking back that it's a violation of the NAP. But I'm wondering if there's some circumstances in which it is. So let's just say I'm walking back from my blanket statement that it's a violation of the NAP. Now,
I think the argument that it's a NAP violation has to do with the fact that slander and libel themselves are fraud, because they are defrauding because they're lying, and lying is a form of fraud.
But what are you defrauding them of?
That's where it gets tricky.
Right. And is all fraud a NAP violation, or are we using the word fraud more broadly?
This goes into the question of, is the NAP based upon the action itself alone, or does it also include the object of that action and the effects? And I don't know the answer to that question.
I'm not even quite sure what you mean. I would need like specifics.
Well, okay, the action itself. Let's keep on the slander thing. The action itself of slander.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is lying about somebody, and you could argue that lying is fraud. That's the action itself. What you described a second ago was about the person that is the victim.
Right.
Okay. And what was actually damaged of theirs. That's the object of the action and the effect.
So in other words, what you're saying is, if I stood alone in a room and said a false thing, it's still false, but it doesn't matter because nobody heard it.
Right. It's the tree and falling in the woods argument.
Right. Like I can sit here and say all kinds of things about anybody but if nobody heard it, I'm still saying something that's not true.
Yeah.
But
is it a question of just the action, or is it a question of the action plus the harm? That's what I'm getting at, I guess. Does that make sense?
Well, in order for something to be a NAP violation, there has to be a harm.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that answered that.
Maybe it is
that question, because it's very context dependent. Like, you know, we talked about the watch question before. If you see someone taking a watch from somebody, you don't know if they're retrieving their own property or if they're stealing. You have to know more about the situation. Mm-hmm. But is it I'm just still trying to think of a situation where it would be a NAP violation. And I'm thinking in cases of where I can think of one where it definitely would be fraudulent inducement, where but that's not really slander. That's just lying.
That's just fraud. Yeah.
I
I had one of those in an ad That showed up on my feed
Yeah.
the other day, but that's another story.
I think we could all agree that fraudulent inducement is, but that's like lying about the quality of a product or something like that. It's not necessarily, well, no, there could be fraudulent inducement where you're lying about a person.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about hiring, I suppose, where somebody is considering between two applicants and then they're trusting you to give accurate information and you denigrate one falsely.
Mm-hmm. Or something as simple as lying on your resume.
But who is the one that was harmed? Is it the denigrated person, or is it the person that you were talking to that relied upon you to give the accurate information?
On that case, I'll use the lying on the resume thing as the example. You're hurting yourself by making yourself make out something you're not, which eventually comes back and bites you. But at the same time, you're hurting the company who hires you because you're false pretensing it, and you're not bringing skills or experience to the table that they're looking for or may think is important. And it also makes the person who did the hiring look bad because of not having the appropriate judgment or cognizance to check all those details in a way. So there's harm to those folks as well.
But that's not defamation. I'm really trying to
it's
stick.
not always defamation, but it certainly has a negative impact on them.
Yeah, but I'm talking about lying about somebody. Like, I'm really trying to.
Lying about yourself.
But it's lying in a good way. I'm talking about putting somebody down.
Is that really a good way?
Well, you're not saying things bad about yourself.
No,
you're fluffing yourself.
Right, but you're not being truthful either.
No, but I'm dealing with. I'm really trying to stick with saying bad things about people that aren't true.
Okay, fair enough.
And I'm trying to find a good lipstick. And
I don't denigrate people when I'm that I hire that I'm competing against, because half the time I don't know who don't even know what's happening.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, you went with somebody else. Fine, that's just life.
So I'm gonna see if there's comments, because I hid those, and maybe there's some. Okay, let's see here.
Actively fraudulent versus passively.
Yeah. I mean, I am definitely walking back my definite statement
Is there
that.
anything above that?
Yeah.
Just more about Dave Smith.
Yeah, and then it's talking about the sex work and all that. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Defamation, case by case. Yeah. I agree there. I want to put this on screen because I don't like the people who are watching not to get to see it. And I agree we don't need more spider web policies. But I'm just trying to think of clear cases where it would be a NAP violation. And I'm not so sure I can come up with them, but I'm not yet so sure I can't either. But I can definitely think of ones where it's not. Like, for instance, that case where I was speaking with Zach, and he, I felt, was lying about Dave Smith. Was that a NAP violation, that specific case?
Is there evidence to disprove his claim? Or let me rephrase that. Can he prove his claim, or can it be disproven? Let's put it that way.
I don't think it's
because if it's proven, then it's not a slander.
Well,
if it's disproven, then it could be. Again, it goes to the effect of what harm is on it. And again, I'm getting more and more into that argument, more and more of that position that yes, it does matter what the harm is and the object of the statement is.
Okay, well, let's make up a fake person.
I'm slowly walking myself in that direction because as the more we talk about it, I'm kind of I don't want to say evolving my point of view here.
I'm totally evolving my view.
It's developing. Okay.
Well, let's forget about Zach. Let's say there was some guy there named Luke that I was talking to that said that that Dave Smith had an affinity for fucking sheep. Okay. I'm just saying.
I'm sorry, but that's funny.
It's not Dave. I'm sorry.
It's probably not true, but it's funny.
I made that up.
It's
okay.
An example of the absurd, but yeah.
Right. And it was false because it is. Is that then a violation of the NAP? If Luke said that about Dave and it was false.
Okay.
Is that a violation of the NAP? I would say no.
At that point, no. But if somebody then uses that later on to
do what?
To sully him in public, deny him a job,
Okay, let's start
falsely
with.
prosecute him for
Okay,
animal
well,
husbandry, etc., and so on, then that's a
Did you
different
say
argument.
husbandry?
Well, I was trying not to say bestiality. Okay.
Yeah, but that makes it even worse. I know that's not what. Is that where that term came from?
Apparently. Well, I don't know. I don't know, and I'm not going to go there because anything I say will get misconstrued by somebody.
Okay, no, but no, let's deal with one at a time. Sullying his name in public.
Yes.
Well, Luke already did that if he was on my show saying that.
Yeah.
And we said that wasn't an app violation.
No, you said you didn't think it was. I'm still thinking about it.
Oh, I thought you agreed.
I said I'm still working.
Okay. Well, I don't think so. And I'm trying to think of where it would progress into one. What? So if it lost him a job, I'm not so sure because I think the employer has some sort of duty to verify things.
They do, but they don't always do it.
But that's their problem then.
It is, but a failure to dutifully act on their own behalf, and that is their own behalf in this case, to verify the information, and it also causes harm to the individual along the way that's a whole different discussion about.
But what is the harm? Was Dave owed that job? Did he have a right to it?
No.
See, you see where I'm going?
Right.
Like the employer could have not hired him just because he didn't like the name Dave.
Yeah.
So,
and frankly, if that wouldn't be someone I would want to work for anyway, but that's another story.
It's
because that's shallow, petty, and absurd.
But I'm still trying to. I'm not so sure that's actionable because he had no right to the job.
See, that raises the other question: does a violation of the NAP does it have to be something that's actionable?
Yes, I think so.
Why? I'm not.
Because it's aggression.
I'm asking for the reason.
Because you can always defend against aggression. A violation of that means that somebody committed aggression against you.
Yes.
And aggression always justifies. It doesn't mean you have to respond. Yeah. Some sort of proportional response.
Where's Dr. Roar when we need her? She could really give us a good conversation.
Well, I know that Block and Rothbard had all said that there's no NAP violation or law broken with libel, slander, or any of that. Mm-hmm. But
Block has made a career out of skirting that edge.
What, he's defamed people?
Oh yes, he has.
Well, I don't want to get it. I don't know anything about it, so I don't want that here because again, I don't know if it's a NAP violation or not. So I don't want to give a platform to something that I don't know is true or not.
It's in the archives, but anyway.
Yeah, I in full disclosure,
he skates that edge on a regular basis.
In full disclosure, I'm really fond of Dr. Block, and he's a friend of mine, so I kind of really just don't even want to go there. Let me see here. I gotta outline my lips. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to struggle with this for a while, but at least I did correct my kind of.
We're in a lot of deep nuance here.
Yeah, well,
that's good. That's good.
Yeah, well, that statement was kind of hyperbolic because that was kind of getting under my skin.
There's a rhetorical one up there.
Yeah, let me see, and then we will be getting ready to go downstairs. Let's see here. Okay, so James asks, I like putting it on the screen, what if you call someone a white supremacist and it costs them their job and leads to violence? Okay. Does an employer have the right to fire somebody because even if it's not true, because they don't want to have the kind of people that draw people that call them false names? Does it matter? See,
say that again, please.
Okay. Let's say an employer wants the type of people to work for them who are just milquetoast and don't have a bunch of enemies and rightly or wrongly don't inspire people to call them white supremacists, whether they are or they aren't. They do. They have a right to fire somebody for being called a white supremacist, whether they are one or not, because they just might not want that controversy and don't care whether you are one or not.
Sounds like Google.
But I'm just saying that was his scenario, and and it says it costs them their job. You don't have a right to your job.
Well, the real question I have there is, it says it leads to violence. What is that?
That
What's
I
that?
don't
I
even
understand what that refers.
Well, I'm going to get to that part. I want to deal with the job part. If you're unless you have some kind of contract, in which case, then I think the employee would have a case against the employer for breach of contract, and it would have really nothing to do with the person who called them a white supremacist.
Well, no employer in their right mind is going to come out and fire somebody because they were claimed to be a white supremacist.
Oh, God, yes. I think plenty of people have gotten fired because somebody on the internet called them a white supremacist.
No, but the employer is not going to out say that's the reason why.
Oh.
Because that leaves them wide open for God knows what, for wrongful termination lawsuits and God knows what else.
Depends on what kind of state. In Florida, that's totally right to work, so you can fire people for anything.
Colorado's an at-will state, and they can fire them for anything too. But that still doesn't mean you can't. That there are certain things you can't fire them for. You can't fire somebody for their opinions. You can't fire somebody for their state of being in certain ways, like being a gay or being a male.
No, there's certain protected classes, but you
Right.
can fire them for their opinions. You can fire people for their political opinion. It's completely legal to do that.
I hadn't seen it yet.
I've seen it. In Florida, I've seen it. That's why I try to keep my political opinions out of my job.
Well, that's why I do it too, because frankly, there's.
Well, yeah, you're in a little bit of a different situation too, with, the type of work, but
It's also a case of, while people will talk politics on the job, and the career field I'm in is much more conservative in a lot of places. At the same time, it distracts from the work.
But yeah,
software in terms of what's in the code is apolitical, and if it is not, then you're in bad mojo, because then you have things like what's happening with Dominion.
But your political opinion's not a protected thing. You definitely can be fired for your political opinion. So it leads to violence. That I'm not so sure. That gets back to the incitement.
I'm not even sure what that even means in the question.
I think they think somebody hears that you're a white supremacist, so then they beat you up.
Or the other way you look at that is say, oh, it'll cost you your job, so you went postal on them.
Oh no, I don't think that's what he
the
means.
case either. But
No, I think
the question is vaguely worded. I could see an interpretation either way, and it's like, what?
No, I think it's pretty clear. I think he means somebody assaults you.
Yeah.
In which case, there though, that gets back into the incitement thing, and I would put the blame on the person assaulting you. If they just assault you because some Joe Blow on the internet or whatever called you a white supremacist with no evidence, you have personal responsibility. So I don't. That person does.
Okay, then let's take that argument that person A says you're a white supremacist.
Mm-hmm.
Makes employer fire you, so you lose your job, or makes person C get
punch
pissed
you in the
off
head.
by that and punch you in the head. Okay, let's flip it around. You're a bartender.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing your job. You're serving drinks to somebody. You stop serving them.
Mm-hmm.
They leave. They drive drunk. They get in an accident. They hurt or kill somebody. Okay, that drunk driver is the one that committed the harm.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the bartender liable?
They shouldn't be.
Exactly. So that, if we want to put it for that perspective of direct responsibility for an action, which is what I believe in anyway, fine.
No, I know.
Again, I might be agreeing with you here. It's possible.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, no, I don't. I know the law says differently, but I don't think the bartender should be responsible.
The law never said the law made sense.
Yeah. And Mallory is doing what we're doing. She says every scenario. Let's put this on the screen. Every scenario she went through her head comes full circle where she has to pose it right. It's a big Pandora's box. And I'm not really too sure yet, and I'm never too proud to say when I don't know.
Well, this is a lot of in-depth and nuanced conversation about what's under the hood on these things, and having that conversation is fantastic.
And
it really does make you stop and think.
What about the examples of kids who got into college and are slandered, resulting in their admission being canceled? Are they entitled to go to that college? I mean, it's just like asking if you don't get a job.
It's not really quite. No, they're different. Okay, because on the entitlement of the so-called entitlement of having a job, of getting a job, that's one thing. But in this case, they're already in school and they're already paying for it. They're already paying for that education, and then have somebody just destroy it based on innuendo and false claims. And I understand what that's like, having been dragged before a college honor board when I was a freshman, even though their arguments were totally absurd.
But then the case would be against the college.
Yes.
Right. It's not against the slanderer.
Right.
Because we're talking
But
here.
the college acts as an arbiter of that issue and can result in a person being expelled for that accusation. And then the result of that is that, okay, well, I was wronged and I'm getting screwed for it, but they're keeping my money. And frankly, if they're going to be screwing me over, they need to, kicking me out, they don't have a right to keep that.
Well, but again, your case isn't against. I'm really trying to keep this narrow of it being damages or a law against the person who uttered the lie. In this case, you would then have a case against the college. It's not the person who lied, because the college, after they had your money, there's a certain contractual duty between you two where they should have to investigate and prove it and not just believe what somebody said.
And a lot of times that hasn't been happening.
Well, then you would have a case against the college, though.
Right.
It's not against the slanderer.
Yeah.
So, again, I guess the only conclusion I'm coming to here is that I definitely was wrong in saying that it's a NAP violation. And I'm now very unclear as to whether it ever would be, though I haven't ruled it out. But each case we've brought up, I haven't found it yet.
Mm.
So, this...
Bring up that second to bottom comment right there. That one. Yeah.
He changed his mind, I think, but he had said it was the person who had done the slandering would be responsible, not the employer.
Which raises I want to mention that because it raises the question then. Is the employer, or to extend it to the college argument, the college?
I think those two are similar, very similar.
They're similar, but I'm paralleling here on purpose. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that their failure to properly investigate, adjudicate, due process, however you want to describe it, is that, setting aside whether you have the right to that in those private settings or not, does that make them guilty of aiding and abetting the slanderer?
No, I wouldn't think so at all. I think that's really a stretch.
Even if they willfully choose to not do it?
No, I don't think so. I would think that's my instinct, but I don't think so. Gotta take down my mirror here because I gotta plug in this. And I said it's very similar with the school as with the employer. I can't see up here for my plugs. I take that back because it actually, I think, is quite different. I got to turn this light off 1 second so I can see under here. Come on now. There we go. Put in my other light. Okay, plug that in.
There you go.
The employer, if you had an employment contract, that would be similar to the school. But if it was just an at-will relationship with your employer, they don't have any kind of duty to investigate the allegation. They can fire you for any reason they want to, except for... And now we're also... Forget about the except for, because I'm trying to deal with this actually in Libertopia. Mm. So unless you have a contract in Libertopia, there are no protected classes. They could fire you because they've all decided.
That's because in Libertopia, classes don't exist except for one class, which is the individual.
But just saying, they could wake up that morning, decide they don't like black people, and fire you because you're black. Yeah. They would suck. Hopefully, people would take some kind of free market action. But they can.
And that's interesting. Just a sidebar on that. That's interesting because you're right. I agree with you completely. The thing of it is that you have people in the party who have tried to shift things to the left, where the left believes that can't be the case.
Well, they're wrong.
I know they're wrong. But why, at the same time, it's like, well, if you're trying to shift people to the left who actually believe this, are you going to try to shift the party position on that to reflect that left and go against our fundamental principles?
Plenty of people have. Nick tried that a little bit.
And that is something I have a serious objection to.
Oh, yeah, me too. Well, and listen, excuse me, because they made these statements publicly, don't have a problem saying people who actually have said the party position should be the one way or the other.
Advocation of it, that's one thing, but yeah.
No, I meant that this actually brings up a good point. And here's why I'm really reluctant to say that even any case of libel is a violation of the NAP. Once you start getting into words being a violation of the NAP, it's not a big step to then start to buy into that leftist idea of microaggressions and things like that.
True.
So I do think that in our haste where we have this knee-jerk, which is a good knee-jerk, but knee-jerk distaste for liars and defamers, that we have to be real careful of the unintended consequences of making words violence or aggression, which would be the better term, but same thing.
I can make words violent. Just smack your head with a book. I'm kidding. Although there is
this isn't the cult of R&R. Try to keep things very focused here.
Of course not. I wouldn't smack the head with Roberts.
So yeah, so that's also my reluctance, because if libel is a violation of the NAP, then it just my blanket, very wrong-headed statement. Then words are aggression, and that leads to all kinds of things we wouldn't like. And now it's bringing up even more. Let's see what else everyone is coming up with. This always has to be an interactive discussion. So put James up here. He meant where he said the slanderer would be responsible. He meant in terms of losing your job. If the person who slandered could predictably know it could result. For example, people doxing someone to their employer. That's an active slander versus just calling someone a name like a racist.
I'm glad he made it. I'm glad he differentiated between active there versus what he was asking about passive earlier.
But again, I mean, there's definite intent there for you to lose your job, but if you're at will, I don't know. That's an interesting case. I don't know. My gut after all of this discussion is to say no. Don't work for cowards. I mean, if someone's going to intimidate an employer like that, I think it's more on the employer.
Yeah, I'm going to peel back my own personal hood for a minute here. Yeah,
don't say that on this show, because then they'll be saying you have a KKK hood or something.
No,
because we talked about Dave Smith.
I'm not talking about that. Right now, there is a case before the Civil Rights Commission claiming I'm a racist. It has nothing to do with my workplace. My workplace is well aware of it because I have made them aware of it.
But that was the homeowners thing, right?
Yeah, it's still ongoing. The guy is completely FOS. But there could have negative ramifications if this thing, for some bizarre reason, is found to be in this guy's favor. By the way, folks, he's literally making crap up.
Well, that...
And the only reason that there hasn't been any so-called damage to my reputation publicly on this is because it hasn't been made public to this point, even though it's considered public record.
Yeah, but it could be at some point. So
it could be.
Yeah. I mean, I hear what you're saying. But they had a good comment here. Mallory did. I think a lot of people forget we still have the ability to outcast immoral ideas and action without laws and policies. Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm trying to get at.
Until censorship prevents you from...
Well...
but that's another story. That kind of brings it back full circle to
Well,
Twitter
the censorship is an immoral idea in action a lot of the times.
It is.
So, we have to find ways to oppose it without laws and policies is kind of, I think, is what she was getting at. And James says, my makeup looks amazing. Thank you. Okay, and the issue of economic harm is hard to wrap around my head. I hate saying that because I need to put it on the screen. When someone goes out of their way to lie or slander directly to someone's employer. That's the situation where I'm not so sure I have an answer on yet. I would let me tell you, here's where I'm getting hung up. If it's an at-will work state, or situation, because we're dealing with libertopia, no contract, they can fire you for whatever reason they want. They could wake up in a bad mood, and you can't sue their wife for putting them in a bad mood that day that caused you to lose your job. Now, if you have a contract and they fire you without, invoking, you better negotiate a good contract, but with, and somehow violate that contract, you might then have an action against both people there. You definitely would have an action against your employer, but you might have an action against the slanderer there and it's not for the slander, I don't think, or the slander would be tangential. It would be for tortious interference with a contract, which is a little different.
And while there's a whole different question about whether or not at will is no contract or not, because when you sign a job offer, you're also agreeing to all their terms of conditions of employment.
I've never signed a job offer in my life.
That's the norm in my business.
It's not the norm in mine.
They don't send you a letter saying we're offering you this position for that. Well, for me, that's normal.
No, and I can tell you, in my before my prior husband became a police officer, which was the end of our marriage, but he had worked at a lot of different places, and he never ever had to sign a job offer. He worked in trades, in construction, and in installing home security systems and that sort of thing.
In the jobs I've had all my 24 odd years working software, every single one of them has had a formal written offer.
No, none of mine have, and
every single one of them has said, this includes following our policies and procedures and this, that, and the whatnot, and so on. Every single time.
Well, that's a little bit of a different situation than I'm talking about.
Is that a contract?
I don't know.
I don't either, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't either. But
I'd have to see it.
That's a whole different discussion.
On the face of it, it doesn't, but I'd have to see it.
Right.
And contract laws in each state's a little bit different. And again, we're kind of talking about
it in multiple states.
Yeah, in Libertopia
again,
anyway.
That's like I said, that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah. But one other thing I wanted to bring on here. You know that group on Facebook called the Fakertarians?
I've heard of it, but I haven't.
Yeah, they're the Jerry Springer of the Liberty movement. In other words,
we have a lot of those.
No, this is the worst because it's like an organized thing. They're basically the ass boil of liberty.
Again, there's a lot of those.
Yeah, but this again. So they one of their big brains, they're very big brained. And they also
is that a sarcastic term?
It's very sarcastic. So one of the big brains there with that clip I did had thought, they got me because what did I say slander in there, or did I say libel?
I don't remember.
Well, whatever it was, okay. Well, they were...
One's written, one's spoken, but they're effectively the same thing.
Right. Libel is written, right?
I think so.
I remember... Slander is spoken, libel is written.
Slander is spoken, S&S versus the other one, which is...
Okay, yeah. Right. So the big brains there thought that they got me, and they're like, and she's a paralegal. Because Zach's comment was typed out in chat, and put on the screen.
Yeah.
And I called it slander. And they go, she don't even know that's libel. The big brains. And what the big brains don't know is that those two things in the age of the internet have started, they're never, it's not clear-cut law anymore.
Yeah, it's blurred.
What?
It's blurred.
It's totally blurred. Because when you write, if you're talking to a host of a show, and you write something, and you know that this host puts it on the screen and then reads it, is it your intention for it to remain in writing, or was it to be spoken?
Right.
So there is cases on this.
How often colloquially do we say on posts on the internet, reread what I said,
right,
versus reread what I wrote?
So it's the big brains really.
I tend to say reread what I stated.
Yeah.
But,
Well, the big brains thought they got me, but. And then I would ask the big brains, does that then mean that people who have a voice box problem or whatever and can't speak, they're incapable of committing slander if they write something down and ask someone else to read it?
Somebody who has a cochlear implant who has a computer screen which takes the words that are spoken and puts them on the screen
Right.
so he can see them.
Does that then become libel instead of
And
slander?
we're talking about a certain radio talk show host that we're
Yeah.
well aware of. I'm not going to name names.
So
But
it's
still
it's
point of case.
yeah.
It's gotten blurred.
Those distinctions were made in a time when there wasn't mass communication.
And
So
it was in a time when the internet didn't exist, and there was a much more clear distinction between the written word and the
right.
spoken word.
That's like, it's back where if you said something, and the whole reason there were the different penalties is if you said something, very less people would hear it. You were in a small town generally, and some people would hear it. But if you printed something, it had the ability to reach more,
Correct,
and
because
that's
the print was larger circulation.
right.
And as technology improved with audio recordings, that changed a little bit, and it's progressed over time, you know, and it just keeps slowly progressing to the point
Right.
now where it's so blurry.
The difference is it's just dumb. And I do think where I think the law is going to go on that is to either get rid of the term libel and call everything slander because that's the more common word,
Right.
or get rid of both words and just call everything defamation because that covers both.
I think that's more where it's headed. To be
Right.
honest.
So I know the big brains, they thought they showed me. And funny too, the big brains over there also said that I exude small dick energy. And what I said is, well, I hope so, because I thought that Wayne would be very, very upset if he looked in my knickers one day and there was a big dick lurking in there, you know?
I'm sorry. That's just hilarious.
I know. It's like, but this is big brains people, Mike. We can't possibly understand them. It's the big brains.
These are the people who can't find their way out of a paper bag when you spot
Yeah.
on 3 sides in the
Yes,
bottom.
yes.
Yes, I know.
And yeah, so there you go. I figured I would do my little fakertarians moment, though I have dubbed them the fuckertarians, but just so we all know. So I'm a small-dicked paralegal, apparently, who doesn't know the difference between libel and slander because the big brains said so.
I am not going to touch that one with anything because A, we're not married to each other, and B, that's none of my business.
Well, but let me tell you, I'm really upset. No, I'm not. So I would like to give my...
Okay, that's glitter, not crocodile tears. Okay.
See, but I wanted to give my official response to the fakertarians or the fuckertarians. You ready?
Yes.
That's my official response.
Oh, you half-assed it.
I had that. Well, this one I broke a fingernail and I didn't want to show it.
Oh.
Plus, listen, go on this and sit it on it.
There's always the Spaceball salute.
What's that? Oh, well, I got to fix this nail, but yeah. And these are nice claws too, so I sit on it and you'd really not have a good
How
time.
the hell you type with those things.
All right, guys. So I think we are. Let me make sure there's no other comments. This went way longer. So let's see. Hold on. I got to put on my glasses. Yeah, that group is nasty, isn't it? They're horrible. I just block them all. The problem is that my friends think they're doing me a favor and they send me screenshots. And in a way, they're doing me a favor because then I know who else to block. But in general, like, I honestly don't care. Apparently, I drove somebody out of the party who was part of the Fakertarians, and he was on Twitter saying I drove him out. And you want to know what my response was? Is who are you? I don't even know who you are to drive you out of the party. But
and further, it's like this is not an airport. No need to announce your departure.
Oh, Mallory wants to know the lipstick. This is fantastic. You have seen the ads for this. This is great lipstick. This is, have you ever heard the brand Be Same? So it's vintage colors that got reproduced, from like World War I, World War II era. So yeah, it's a lovely, I love it. And this color is Victory Red. And you know that that was a classic red. Like the We Can Do It lady was wearing the Victory Red. All of the riveting girls were
Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah, we're wearing this. So it's Besame, Besame Cosmetics. What they also have is Cake Mascara, which is fantastic. So I did the spill. All right, everyone, we're gonna be going.
One
and
more comment.
what? Oh yeah. Takeaway is verbiage with policies need to be updated before we are stuck in this we don't know situation. Well, with libertarians, we're always going to have some we don't know situation, I think.
Yes,
but
that's part of the unpredictability of life.
all right, y'all, we're going to go do our rest of our day. And I want to make sure I close this out properly. Thank you for hanging out.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business.